The problem with humans, I decided on my third rotation as an instructor at the Galactic Military Academy, was that they were far too quiet. My name is Vorthan Kellix, and I have trained warriors from 63 species across 4 spiral arms of the galaxy. I have seen Kellix cadets accidentally tear through reinforced bulkheads during basic drills. I have watched Thrumite students set their own dormitories on fire just to prove a point about thermal resistance. I have even survived teaching a class of Zenthari, who communicate primarily through aggressive posturing and occasional acts of minor violence. But humans? Humans just sat there. They are defective, my colleague Prella announced during our weekly staff meeting. She was a Voskan, which meant she had 4 arms and absolutely zero patience for what she called behavioral anomalies. Define defective, I said, though I knew exactly what she meant. Look at this. Prella projected a holographic display of our current human cohort, class 742. They arrive on time, they take notes, they never interrupt. When I assign combat simulations, they complete them within acceptable parameters and return to their seats. No boasting, no chest beating, no challenges to authority. I studied the display. 12 humans, ranging in age from 20 to 25 standard years. Marcus Flynn, Dakota Reeves, Kimiko Tanaka, Raj Patel. Names I had memorized because, unlike most cadets, these particular beings never gave me reason to remember them through disciplinary action. Maybe they are just well-behaved, offered Quilnax, our tactical sciences professor. He was old, even by Quilnax standards, which meant he had survived approximately 400 years of teaching young idiots how not to die in space. Prella's eye stalks quivered with frustration. Well-behaved? These are military cadets, not library attendants. They should have some fire, some aggression. Instead, they sit in the back, row and smile politely when I explain disembowelment techniques. Perhaps we should review their entrance examinations, I suggested. Already did, Prella said. All 12 passed the standard psychological evaluations. Cleared for combat training. No flags for cowardice, no markers for excessive pacifism. On paper, they are perfectly normal human specimens. Then what is the concern? The concern, Vorthan, is that something is very wrong with creatures who stay this calm. Especially humans. She had a point. Humans had a reputation. 3 years ago, a human freighter crew had accidentally wandered into a Zorakian ambush and somehow managed to fight their way out using nothing but mining equipment and what their captain later described as spite. 2 years ago, a human medical officer on a transport ship had single-handedly repelled boarders with a portable surgical laser and a fire extinguisher. The stories were numerous and increasingly difficult to believe. Yet here in our academy, these 12 humans displayed none of that legendary chaos. They were practically serene. I propose an experiment, Prella said. Tomorrow, I will provoke them, push them beyond normal parameters. If they truly are standard humans, something should crack. I should have stopped her. I should have remembered that poking a quiet predator was generally considered poor survival strategy. But I was curious. The next morning, Prella entered the Advanced Combat Theory classroom with what I can only describe as malicious enthusiasm. I watched from the observation deck as she activated the main holographic display. Today, she announced, we will discuss the Battle of Kronos Station. Cadet Flynn, please stand and explain the tactical failures that led to the station's destruction. Marcus Flynn, a human with sandy hair and the kind of forgettable face that you would never pick out of a crowd, rose slowly from his seat. The commanding officer failed to account for 3-dimensional attack vectors and did not properly utilize available defensive satellites. Correct. And how many died due to this incompetence? Approximately 43,000 personnel, Instructor. Sit down. Prella's voice carried an edge. Cadet Tanaka, stand. If you had been in command, what would you have done differently? Kimiko Tanaka, small-framed with dark hair pulled into a practical bun, stood without expression. I would have repositioned the satellite grid into a layered defense pattern and evacuated non-combat personnel through the secondary dock network. And you believe this would have worked? Yes, Instructor. Based on what? Your extensive military experience? Prella's sarcasm was thick enough to require navigational beacons. based on pattern recognition and probability analysis. Instructor, sit. This continued for another 20 minutes. Prella selected human after human, questioning their judgments, mocking their suggestions, and generally behaving in a manner designed to trigger a response. Any response. The humans simply answered her questions and sat back down. I watched Prella's frustration mount. Finally, she slammed one of her 4 hands on her desk. Does nothing provoke you people? Do you feel anything at all? Dakota Reeves, a tall human female with auburn hair, raised her hand. Permission to speak, Instructor? Granted. We feel plenty, Instructor. We just prefer not to waste energy on performative displays. Performative displays, Prella repeated slowly. You consider emotional response to be a waste of energy? In a classroom setting, yes, Instructor. And in combat? Combat is different, Instructor. How convenient. Sit down. Prella turned to address the entire class. Since you all seem so confident in your tactical brilliance and emotional control, perhaps you would enjoy a practical examination. Tomorrow morning, 0600 hours, Combat Simulation Chamber 4, full. Tactical scenario. No preparation time. Dismissed. The humans gathered their materials and filed out in orderly fashion. Not one of them seemed concerned. I met Prella in the corridor outside. That seemed excessive. Those beings are hiding something, she insisted. I can sense it. Tomorrow's simulation will expose whatever they are concealing. I returned to my office and did something I should have done weeks ago. I accessed the human database. Not the sanitized version available to most faculty, but the full military records. It required 3 separate authorization codes and a retinal scan. What I found made my circulatory system run cold. Marcus Flynn. Service record, 3 years with the Human Expeditionary Forces. Specialty, asymmetric warfare. Confirmed eliminations, classified, but the number was redacted behind 4 separate security barriers. Dakota Reeves, former combat medic, 2 tours in contested space. Recommended for 67 commendations. Actually, accepted, 0. Reason cited, prefers not to draw attention. Kimiko Tanaka. Intelligence Operations, Psychological Operations Specialist. The attached note from her commanding officer read, Cadet Tanaka is dangerously competent. Do not mistake her politeness for weakness. Raj Patel, demolitions expert, hull breaching specialist, reprimanded twice for excessive creativity in problem solving. On and on the files went. Every single human in Class 742 had extensive combat experience. Real combat. The kind where people died and ships exploded and survival was never guaranteed. They were not students. They were veterans, and we had been treating them like children. I tried to contact Prella immediately, but she had already left for the evening. I sent urgent messages to her personal communicator. All went unanswered. The next morning arrived faster than I wanted. I reached Combat Simulation Chamber 4 at 0545, 15 minutes before the scheduled examination. Prella was already there, looking satisfied with herself. You seem concerned, Vorthan. I reviewed their files last night. The full files. Her eye stalk swiveled toward me. And we have been teaching combat tactics to beings who have more actual combat experience than both of us combined. Prella, these humans are not students. They are taking classes to formalize their training, to earn credentials, but they have already survived things that would kill most of our regular cadets. Interesting, Prella said, though she did not sound particularly concerned. Then perhaps today's simulation will actually challenge them. What exactly did you program into the simulation? Standard breach and clear scenario. Hostage extraction. Enemy combatants are numerically superior. Time limit of 30 minutes. I designed it to require perfect coordination and aggressive tactics. Difficulty level? Advanced, possibly extreme. I may have adjusted some parameters last night after our conversation. How extreme? Prella's expression, if you could read Voskan facial structures, appeared almost gleeful. Let us just say that most graduate-level combat teams fail this scenario 60% of the time. The humans arrived at precisely 0600. They wore standard training gear and carried simulated weapons. They looked, as always, completely unremarkable. Prella activated the intercom. Cadets, you will enter the simulation chamber when the doors open. Your mission is to breach the facility, extract the hostages, and eliminate all hostile forces. You have 30 minutes. Lethal force is authorized. Begin. The doors opened. The humans walked in. What happened next would later be described in training manuals as a textbook example of perfect unit cohesion under extreme conditions. What I witnessed was something else entirely. The simulation began with an ambush. 40 hostile combatants materialized around the entry point, a standard test to see how cadets react to immediate, overwhelming force. The humans did not panic. They did not freeze. They simply moved. Marcus Flynn dropped to one knee and began placing precision fire, calling targets in a calm voice. Left cluster, 3 targets, Raj, Dakota, suppressing fire on the catwalk. Dakota and Raj responded instantly, moving to designated positions without hesitation. Kimiko Tanaka had somehow circled the entire hostile formation in under 10 seconds and began eliminating targets from behind. How did she move that fast? Prella breathed. I don't know. The simulation adapted, spawning more enemies, adding environmental hazards, collapsing corridors. Standard protocol to increase pressure. The humans adapted faster. They moved through that simulation like water through cracks, never stopping, never hesitating. They used hand signals I did not recognize. They executed maneuvers that should not have worked but somehow did. 15 minutes into the 30-minute scenario, they had cleared the facility, secured all hostages, and eliminated every hostile combatant. Prella stared at the readouts. That is impossible. The simulation was designed to be nearly impossible. Pull up their performance metrics, I said quietly. She did. The numbers appeared on screen. 0 casualties, 0 injuries, ammunition expenditure, minimal. Time elapsed, 15 minutes, 22 seconds. Hostile elimination rate, 100%. Hostage survival rate, 100%. Efficiency rating, beyond standard parameters. Vorthan, Prella said slowly, what exactly are we teaching these beings? I don't think we are teaching them anything, I replied. I think they are humoring us. The humans emerged from the simulation chamber looking exactly as they had going in, not sweating, not breathing heavily. Marcus Flynn even smiled politely. How was that, instructor? Did we meet your expectations? Prella seemed unable to form words. I stepped forward. Cadet Flynn, may I ask you a question? Of course, instructor. Why are you here, at this academy? With your level of experience, you could be teaching these classes, not attending them. Flynn exchanged glances with his fellow humans. Dakota Reeves nodded slightly, some unspoken communication passing between them. Sir, Flynn said carefully, humans have learned that credentials matter in the Galactic Alliance. Experience alone is not enough. We need the certifications, the official recognition. Otherwise, we are just... What do other species call us? Cowboys? Reckless primitives? So you sit quietly in our classes? Yes, sir. We sit quietly. We take notes. We nod politely when instructors explain tactics we have already used in the field. Because this is how the system works. And the combat logs, I said, pulling up his file on my personal display. The redacted sections, the classified eliminations. Should I be concerned about what I cannot read? Flynn's expression never changed, but something flickered in his eyes. Something very old and very tired. Sir, humans come from a planet where nearly everything wants to kill us. We evolved surrounded by predators. We learned to hunt by being hunted. When we reached space, we discovered that the universe was even more dangerous than our homeworld. So we adapted. We learned. We survived. He paused, looking at the simulation chamber behind us. You want to know why we sit quietly in class, instructor? It's because we have already seen the monsters. We have already fought the battles. We have already lost friends and watched ships burn. Sitting in a classroom, learning proper terminology and official protocols, that is the easy part. That is the peaceful part. And you prefer peace, I said. We prefer survival, Dakota Reeves corrected. Peace is just a more efficient form of it. Prella finally found her voice. But the simulation, how did you? Instructor, Kimiko Tanaka said gently. That was a simulation. It had patterns. It had programming. It had rules. She smiled, and for the first time, I saw something genuinely dangerous in that expression. Real combat does not have rules. I understood then. These humans were not hiding. They were not concealing weakness or lacking courage. They were simply existing in a state that most species never reached. They had already survived enough to know that survival was all that mattered. They were quiet because they had nothing to prove. They were calm because they had already faced real fear. They were polite because they understood that courtesy cost nothing and often prevented violence. "Class dismissed," I said, "and for what it is worth. Thank you for your patience with us." The humans gathered their equipment and left. As they reached the door, Marcus Flynn turned back. "Instructor Kellix, one more thing." "Yes, cadet? The universe is a dangerous place, but here's what humans figured out a long time ago. The most dangerous thing in the universe is not the loudest or the biggest or the flashiest." He smiled. "It's the one you don't see coming." After they left, Prella and I stood in silence. "We need to review their files more carefully," she finally said. "I think," I replied slowly, "that perhaps we should be asking them to review ours." The incident in Combat Simulation Chamber 4 changed everything. Within 6 hours, every instructor at the Galactic Military Academy had received a classified briefing about our human students. Within 12 hours, the Academy Commandant, a 400-year-old Thoraxian named Golvax, who had personally survived 3 major wars, called an emergency faculty meeting. "Explain to me," Golvax rumbled, his massive form filling the head of the conference table, "how we have 12 combat veterans enrolled as basic cadets, and nobody noticed until yesterday." Prella shifted uncomfortably. I remained silent. Around the table, 20 other instructors suddenly found their data pads extremely interesting. Their entrance examinations were standard, offered Professor Mintak, our xenobiology specialist. They passed all requirements. Nothing in the initial screening suggested excessive prior experience. Nothing suggested it, Golvax repeated, because humans apparently consider 3 years of active combat duty to be unremarkable. According to these files, one of our cadets, this Raj Patel, once disabled an entire pirate corvette using nothing but mining charges, and what he described in his report as, quote, "improvised tactical creativity," end quote. To be fair, I ventured, he did blow up the ship afterward. He attached himself to the hull, cut through 3 decks, planted explosives throughout the vessel, evacuated via stolen escape pod, and detonated the charges from a safe distance, alone, in under 40 minutes. Golvax's eyes, all 6 of them, focused on me with unsettling intensity. "Does that sound like basic cadet material to you, Instructor Kellix?" "No, Commandant. And yet here we are, teaching these beings how to properly fill out equipment requisition forms." Quilnax, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "Perhaps the question we should be asking is not why they are here, but what we can learn from them." Elaborate. "The humans have combat experience in environments and situations that most of our standard curriculum never addresses. Asymmetric warfare, resource-limited engagements, survival scenarios that require creative problem-solving rather than standard tactical doctrine. If they are willing to share their knowledge, we could significantly improve our training programs." Golvax considered this. "You propose we learn from our students. I propose we acknowledge that experience is valuable regardless of its source." Quilnax said, "Pride should not prevent education." "Very well." Golvax stood, which always made the conference room feel substantially smaller. "Instructor Kellix, since you and Instructor Prella discovered this situation, you will be responsible for developing a new curriculum module. You will work directly with the human cadets to document their tactical methodologies. I want a full report in 3 weeks. "Commandant," I said carefully, "the humans may not be willing to share operational details. Much of their combat history is classified. Then unclassify it. I will handle the bureaucratic necessities. You handle the educational ones." The meeting adjourned. I found myself walking alongside Quilnax through the academy corridors. "You set me up," I said without anger. "I provided you an opportunity," he corrected. "Those humans have been sitting in our classes for 2 months, quietly tolerating instruction that must seem painfully basic to them. Don't you want to know what they actually know, what they have actually done? I reviewed their files. I saw the redacted sections. Some part of me does not want to know. That part of you is wise, Quilnack said. But the instructor in you should be curious. He was right. I was curious. And terrified. But mostly curious. I contacted Marcus Flynn that evening and requested a meeting. To my surprise, all 12 humans showed up at my office at the appointed time. They arranged themselves around the room with a kind of casual spatial awareness that spoke of ingrained habit. Nobody stood with their back to the door. Nobody positioned themselves where they could be easily cornered. "Thank you for coming," I began. "The Commandant has authorized a new project. We would like to document your tactical experiences and potentially incorporate them into our training curriculum." The humans exchanged glances. Silent communication again. Finally, Kimiko Tanaka spoke. "Instructor, with respect, most of what we have done would violate at least 15 different Galactic Convention protocols. I am not asking you to confess war crimes. I am asking you to share survival strategies. In human combat experience," Dakota Reeves said slowly, "those two things are often the same thing." Raj Patel leaned forward. "Let me tell you a story, Instructor. 2 years ago, my unit was escorting a civilian transport through disputed territory. We got ambushed by raiders. 4 ships against our single escort frigate. Standard doctrine says we should have withdrawn, called for reinforcements, protected the transport through evasive maneuvering. But you did not. We did not. Because standard doctrine assumes you have time, space, and backup. We had none of those. So I convinced our captain to let me try something stupid. I suited up, took every mining charge we had in storage, used our maneuvering thrusters to jump to the nearest raider ship, attached myself to their hull, cut my way inside, and started leaving presents throughout their vessel." "The mining charges?" "Exactly. Then I stole an escape pod, set the charges on a timer, and got out. 1 ship down. While they were confused about how their companion exploded, our frigate managed to disable a second ship. The other 2 raiders decided this was not worth the trouble and ran away. That is impressive problem solving. That is suicidal desperation that happened to work," Raj corrected. "If any one of 50 different things had gone wrong, I would be dead. The transport would be captured. Everyone loses. But it did work. And that is the thing about human tactics, Instructor. They work right up until they don't." "But they work more often than they should," I observed. "Because we cheat," Marcus Flynn said simply. "Every species in the Galactic Alliance has rules about proper combat. Honor codes, engagement protocols, fair fighting. Humans learned a long time ago that fair fights are for sports. Survival is for winning, and winning means using every advantage you can find, create, or steal. Give me for example. Instructor, you teach a class on void combat tactics. You spend 6 weeks explaining proper formation flying, coordinated fire patterns, and maintaining structural integrity during engagement. All very useful information. Thank you. But here is what you don't teach. You don't teach how to vent atmosphere from non-critical sections to create a makeshift thruster boost. You don't teach how to overload your reactor core to create a temporary electromagnetic pulse. You don't teach how to fake a catastrophic failure to make enemies lower their guard. You don't teach dirty tricks because they are not proper tactics. They are also incredibly dangerous. Yes, but so is dying." Marcus smiled that tired smile again. "Humans don't like dying. We will do almost anything to avoid it, including things that other species consider insane." I activated my recording device. "Tell me everything, and I mean everything. The Commandant wants documentation. I want understanding. If you are willing to teach, I am willing to learn." What followed were 3 weeks of the most intensive education I had ever received. The humans did not hold back. They described scenarios that made my blood chill. They explained tactics that violated every assumption I had about proper military engagement. They detailed survival strategies that ranged from brilliant to absolutely terrifying. Kimiko Tanaka taught me about psychological operations, how humans used information, misinformation, and carefully crafted rumors as weapons just as deadly as any gun. "Most species think of combat as physical confrontation," she explained. Humans understand that the real battle happens in the mind. Make your enemy afraid enough, confused enough, or angry enough, and they will make mistakes. Mistakes we can exploit. Dakota Reeves walked me through battlefield medicine under impossible conditions. Standard medical protocols assume you have supplies, equipment, and time. In real combat, you have whatever you can grab, and about 30 seconds before someone tries to kill you again. So you learn to improvise, seal sucking chest wounds with whatever is nearby, perform surgery with tools designed for completely different purposes, keep people alive through sheer, stubborn refusal to let them die. Raj Patel demonstrated demolitions theory that would probably get him arrested in 15 different star systems. Everything is a weapon if you use it wrong enough, he said cheerfully. Fuel cells, power conduits, atmospheric processors, even cargo containers. The universe is full of things that can explode. You just need to know which buttons to push. Marcus Flynn covered something he called strategic flexibility. Plans never survive contact with the enemy, he said. So stop making rigid plans. Make flexible frameworks. Know your objective. Know your resources. Know your teammates. Then adapt in real time to whatever chaos develops. The side that adapts faster wins. I documented everything. Prella joined me halfway through, her initial skepticism transforming into genuine fascination. Even old Quilnax attended several sessions, nodding approvingly at certain explanations. By the end of 3 weeks, I had compiled over 200 hours of recorded instruction and practical demonstrations. The humans had shared enough tactical innovation to revolutionize half our curriculum. This is remarkable work, Commandant Golvac said, reviewing the materials. Some of these methodologies are unorthodox to the point of madness, but the logic is sound. Brutal, but sound. The humans have agreed to guest lecture in several courses next term, I told him. They believe hands-on demonstration will be more effective than recorded materials alone. Excellent. Though I suspect their definition of hands-on demonstration may traumatize some of our younger cadets. He was not wrong. When Marcus Flynn gave his first guest lecture on adaptive tactical response, 3 Kralix students requested transfers to different classes. When Dakota demonstrated field medicine techniques, 2 instructors fainted. When Raj explained creative demolitions, the entire class sat in stunned silence for 5 minutes afterward. But they learned. Oh, how they learned. The humans became unofficial consultants for the entire combat training program. They did not replace the regular instructors, but they supplemented our teaching with practical experience that no textbook could provide. And they remained quiet, polite, professional, until the incident in week 7. A diplomatic delegation from the Zycarian Empire arrived at the academy for a scheduled inspection. The Zycarians were an influential species, militarily powerful and politically aggressive. They had been pressuring the Galactic Alliance to revise combat training standards to better align with Zycarian methodologies. Their chief military observer, a decorated general named Threxis, sat in on several classes. He seemed particularly interested in the human cadets. "So these are the famous humans," Threxis said during a break between sessions. His translator rendered his tone as condescending. "I have heard stories. Primitive warriors who rely on luck and desperation rather than proper training." Marcus Flynn, who had been reviewing notes nearby, looked up slowly. "We do all right," he said mildly. "I doubt that. Humans have no formal military tradition, no warrior culture, no honor system. You are essentially armed civilians playing at being soldiers." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Every human present went very still. "Sir," Dakota said quietly, "perhaps we should discuss this another time." "Why? Am I offending you?" "Good. Perhaps offense will motivate you to prove me wrong." "Unless you cannot." Threxis smiled, showing many pointed teeth. "I propose a test. My personal guard unit against your human cadets. Standard combat simulation. Let us see how your desperation fares against real training." I should have intervened. I should have declined on their behalf. But some dark, curious part of me wanted to see what would happen. "Accepted," Marcus said. "When and where?" "Tomorrow morning, Combat Simulation Chamber 1. Full tactical scenario. No restrictions." Threxis's smile widened. "I will enjoy teaching you primitives how real warriors fight." After he left, I approached the humans. You don't have to do this. Yes, Marcus said softly, we really do. The next morning, every instructor at the academy found reasons to be near Combat Simulation Chamber 1. Word had spread. This was not just a training exercise. This was a challenge, and challenges mattered. Threxis arrived with 12 Zycarian guards, all heavily decorated veterans. They entered the simulation chamber with arrogant confidence. The humans entered quietly. I had programmed a complex urban warfare scenario, multiple objectives, neutral civilians, hostile, combatants, collateral damage penalties, a true test of tactical skill under difficult conditions. The simulation began. Threxis's guards advanced in perfect formation, utilizing standard Zycarian shock and awe tactics, overwhelming firepower, aggressive posturing, loud and intimidating. The humans disappeared. Where did they go? Prella whispered, watching the tactical display. I don't know, I admitted. The sensors show them spreading throughout the simulation space, but they are using some kind of electronic countermeasures. Their exact positions keep shifting. For 5 minutes, nothing happened. Threxis's guards secured several objectives, eliminated some hostile NPCs, and generally performed exactly as expected. Then the humans struck. It was not an attack, it was a dismantling. One by one, Zycarian guards began getting eliminated from the simulation. Not through direct combat, through traps, through ambushes, through tactics that should not have worked but somehow did. Raj had rigged half the buildings with improvised explosives. Dakota was eliminating targets from impossible angles. Kimiko had apparently hacked into the simulation's civilian NPCs and was using them to gather intelligence. Marcus was coordinating everything with cold precision. 15 minutes into the exercise, all 12 Zycarian guards were eliminated. The humans had completed every objective. 0 casualties, minimal collateral damage, perfect execution. Threxis emerged from the simulation chamber, his expression hovering somewhere between rage and disbelief. That was not proper combat, he sputtered. You used tricks, deception, dishonorable tactics. We used survival tactics, Marcus corrected. And they worked. Real warriors fight with honor. Real warriors go home alive, Dakota said. Honor is for people who can afford it. You are barbarians. Maybe, Marcus agreed. But we are barbarians who win. Threxis left the academy that afternoon. The Zycarian delegation departed shortly after, their inspection report notably brief. I found Marcus in the training yard that evening, sitting alone and staring at nothing. Congratulations, I said. You have probably started a minor diplomatic incident. Yeah, sorry about that. Don't be. That was the most educational demonstration I have witnessed in 30 years of teaching. I sat beside him. Though I have a question. Why do you do this? Why come to this academy, sit through classes, tolerate beings who understand nothing of what you have experienced? You could be commanding ships, leading units, making real differences. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Instructor, humans are good at surviving. We are really, really good at it. But survival alone is not enough. We want to be part of something bigger. We want our skills to be recognized not just as desperate acts, but as legitimate tactics. We want to prove that we belong in this galaxy, not as lucky primitives, but as equals. You proved that today, did we? Or did we just confirm that we are dangerous barbarians who cannot be trusted to fight properly? You are both, I said honestly. You are dangerous. You are unpredictable. You are absolutely terrifying when necessary. But you are also incredibly effective. And in military terms, effectiveness matters more than propriety. Marcus smiled slightly. That is what we keep trying to tell everyone. Then perhaps, I said, we should listen. The humans completed their training at the Galactic Military Academy 3 months later. They graduated with honors, formally certified in every combat specialty. They received their credentials, their official recognition, their proof of legitimacy, and then they went back to doing what they had always done. Surviving, fighting, winning against impossible odds through tactics that nobody else would dare attempt. But now, at least, the galaxy knew why they sat so quietly in class. They had nothing to prove because they had already proven everything. And the most dangerous thing in the universe, I finally understood, was not the being that roared and postured and demanded attention. It was the one sitting calmly in the back row, taking notes, smiling politely, and carrying combat logs that would give nightmares to anyone who read them too carefully. The quiet ones, the patient ones, the humans. May the universe never forget that silence is not the same as weakness. And may we all be grateful that when humans choose to fight, they usually choose to fight on our side.